Program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight Congressman Austin Scott. Welcome, Austin.
Joe, thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Well, you know, you're really in the belly of the beast up in Washington these days, are you not?
we are, but you know what? It's a great country.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity to have the privilege of governing, and,
yes.
and we've got better days ahead.
Yes.
We're going to continue to work, to fight, and make sure that we do what the people need, and hopefully we'll get there.
Well, there are a lot of things going on in Washington and
Sure.
in the whole country these days.
Sure.
And I know you're playing an important role in these decisions. The one thing that I think affects a lot of people locally is health care.
Sure.
And there's an enormous change coming with the Affordable Health Care Act. And I was remarking earlier to you, no one that I know of really knows what's going to happen. We
Right.
constantly make queries about what's really the world is going to be like in 8 months, and we can't get any firm answers. What's going to happen? In Georgia, what's going to be the situation?
Well, what you're exactly right about is the uncertainty. And if you saw Senator Valkis, who was one of the authors of the bill this past week, talk
Yes.
about the fact that he thought the bill was going to fail under its own weight. And now he's not running for election again. If you look, Joe, there are a lot of people who supported this piece of legislation that now that they recognize what is in it are actually stepping out of Congress because they don't want to run for office and take the credit or the responsibility, if you will, for what's actually in the bill.
What is it? May I leap in and just ask, what is in the bill, Austin? I mean, there are thousands of pages of it. I mean, what on earth is about to happen? I mean, I'm a practicing physician. I'm just puzzled as to what the situation is going to be.
Well, let me tell you what's not in the bill. There's not any certainty for anybody in the bill. And so if you're a provider, as a physician, you don't know what rates are going to be. So maybe that forces you to step out of private practice and go to work for a hospital. If you're
Yes.
a hospital,
Yes.
you don't know what your reimbursements are going to be. So how do you budget for the next type of technology
Yes,
that
yes.
may help the patients? If you're an employer, you don't know what your mandate is going to be or your cost of health care is going to be.
Yes.
Really, the only thing that is certain in there is the $2,000 per person penalty that people are going to pay if they are not providing coverage for
Yes,
people
yes.
that work for them and they're above 50 employees. So long term, what I'll tell you, the logistics of the bill that are going to create the problems for putting the bill in place come from the fact that on a monthly basis, Health and Human Services is supposed to report to the IRS whether or not there's credible coverage, and they get to deem what is and is not credible coverage associated with your Social Security number. And then on a monthly basis, the IRS is going to determine who gets the penalty and who gets the credit for the coverage. And so you're talking about two agencies coordinating 12 times a year
Yes.
with health care coverage
Yes.
and certainly tax dollars in the
Yes.
middle of it, and it's going to be a logistical nightmare.
Yes. Well, is this a bridge too far for the country? I mean, there are 300 million plus people here. This is 1/6 of the nation's GNP. It's
Right.
just all the human interchanges that take place every day between a
Sure.
doctor and a patient, all the complexities of that, and the government oversight of that. I mean,
Sure.
isn't it possible there are going to be terrific blunders that are about to happen here?
Joe, let me tell you, we still work with a lot of veterans, have the privilege to work with a lot of veterans who maybe something as simple as a date of birth is wrong in their VA
Yes,
file.
yes.
And it may take us weeks to get
Yes.
that changed for that veteran so that they can actually get their benefits. And so approximately 1% of our population is veterans.
Yes.
And we're we're happy to help
Yes.
each and every one of them that comes in our
Yes.
office. What I can tell you is that the workload in correcting the data input is going to be astronomical. And my fear is that there are going to be more barriers to care than there have ever been in the history of this country for patients.
Yes, I've heard it said, I mean, at least maybe this is an apocryphal statement, but the people that the act is supposed to help, the people
Right.
that are that allegedly right now don't have access to care, are going to have a worse time getting care. I've heard that. And one reason is they're going to depend on large community hospitals. And those community hospitals are going to have terrific problems looking after those people. There are going to be tremendous crush in emergency rooms.
Sure.
It's going to be a real disruption of the normal flow of sick patients to see their doctors and to get into the correct hospital.
Sure. And the way it may start, Joe, is it may be that your rural hospitals start to have the biggest strains,
Yes.
the fastest, and they may be the ones that end up going under, and therefore that pushes all of that
Yes.
population to the larger community hospitals. But we have a Medicaid system
Yes.
in every state in America. We have Peach Care in the state of Georgia, which allowed people to
Yes.
insure their children at a very low rate. And the bottom line is, in many cases, there have been systems made
Yes,
available
right.
for people that they simply chose not to sign up for.
Yes.
So now the federal government has come out and mandated that people are going to purchase a product.
Yes.
Now, whether they want to purchase it or not.
Yes.
The Supreme Court has said that it is constitutional.
Yes.
Not necessarily something I agree with
Right,
them
yes,
on,
yes.
but that makes it the law of the land. And in the hope that we have for changing it would be that if we get some members of the Senate who will acknowledge the problems and the
Yes,
challenges
yes.
with the bill, to work with the members of the House that understand the problems and the
Yes.
challenges of the bill. And I think if the Senate and the House came together,
Yes.
then the president would have to acknowledge the problems that are there.
Yes. Now, Austin, maybe this is true or not true, but at least I've heard reports that some members of Congress are trying to extract their staff as well as their families and themselves from the reach of this legislation. I mean, what's going to happen to you guys up there?
Joe, the law right now is very specific. We as members of Congress are supposed to participate in the same exchanges that the citizens are.
Yes.
And I believe that any effort to repeal that
Yes.
would simply be proof
Yes.
that the systems that's going
Yes.
to be there is not
Yes.
good enough
Yes.
for a member of Congress,
Yes.
which should mean it's
Yes.
not good enough for any member of the
Yes.
general
Yes. Yes.
of America. So
Yes.
I would suggest that if anybody tries to do that, maybe we ought to just strike the word Congress and put American citizen in
Yes.
there,
Yes.
and make sure that exemption is given to any American citizen.
Well, yes. Well, we've heard little reports about it. Maybe the other parties doing this a bit more, but obviously, it's a huge deal, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody's family is going to be impacted.
Oh.
Your whole life is under the thumb of this hastily put together legislation.
It was very hastily put together. It was put together by people who did not understand the logistics of the healthcare system. They did not understand healthcare finance. It
Yes.
was put together with very little respect for the
Right,
citizen
right.
and their right to pick their phizician, and the
Yes,
physician
yes,
to have the right
yes.
to work with the patient
Right,
and determine
right,
which course
right,
of care is
right,
best
right.
for them.
Yes, yes.
And I'll tell you that if, I think any attempt of Congress to exempt themselves from the bill is
Yes.
proof that it shouldn't apply to anybody.
Yes, okay. Well, we'll be watching and
Absolutely.
as time ticks down. Now, Fanny, one particular part of the bill that disturbs me a bit is the so-called Gang of 15, or the people.
Sure.
The people. Maybe you could discuss that a little bit, and that's a little worrisome to
Sure. So essentially, the Gang of 15 is going to be a appointed bureaucracy that is going to determine whether or not the health care in a particular situation is or is not worth the cost.
Yes.
It's rationing of care
Right,
in any
right.
way,
Yes.
shape, or form you cut it. It's something that we as Americans have never done.
Yes.
We understand that God made us all where we die.
Yes. Yes.
I think that certainly there has been a recognition that the total hip that an 85-year-old senior needs
Yes.
may not be the same total hip that Bo Jackson needed
Right,
when he
right.
went
Yes,
back to
yes.
play football again. And those types of things were already being resolved
Yes,
in the
yes.
general public. But essentially what that group is going to do is going to determine what the reimbursement is going to be for any particular care, and
Yes.
it's probably going to be age bracket.
Yes,
So what I'll tell you again is that it's impossible for 15 people to know what 300 million people need,
yes,
and that the better the relationship is between the patient and the physician, the better the
Yes.
health care is going to be, which
Yes.
means the lower the cost is going to be, whether it be through the private sector or through Medicare or through Medicaid. And I think that we're very much going in the wrong direction.
yes. Well, I think we sort of beat that a little bit around, which is good.
Sure.
I was good therapy for me in any event. Now, you have some important committee assignments. What is it? Can you talk a little bit? You're assigned to some committees. What exactly is all that about?
So,
what happens?
Armed Services, obviously Robbins Air Force Base is the largest industrial complex in this area. The president, as you know, has asked for another round of BRAC, just as he did the last time.
Yes,
We sit on the Readiness Subcommittee, the Personnel Subcommittee, and the O&I Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee. So we will be on the subcommittee that will get the first vote on BRAC.
Yes.
I hear very little support for BRAC from
Yes.
members of the committee. What I am most concerned about with what I hear as a member sitting in the
Yes.
Armed Services Committee meetings is the willingness of our military commanders to walk into the committee and on the television tell the members of the Armed Services Committee that they not only accept these reductions, but they want these reductions. And what I'll tell you, Joe, is when we look at the things that are going on out there, when we look at Syria and
yes,
now the use of chemical weapons in Syria, which is second only to nuclear weapons,
Right,
the use
yes,
of nuclear
yes.
weapons. We've got things going on in Korea.
those guys seem a little nutty to me. I mean, I guess the president there seems a little strange.
I'm
Maybe you can't. Maybe you could say that. I mean,
he's certainly very bold
Yes,
considering
yes,
his capabilities.
yes,
We'll put it that way
Yes,
and
yes, I'll let it go at
try
that,
to
okay.
and let it go at that. So I don't.
we won't do
give
you
it to-
more than that. Yes.
But you know, I mean Benghazi. I mean, you know, you look at what's going on in the whole
Yes.
northern part of Africa
Yes.
and in all of the Middle East, and our need for intelligence, the different things that we're having to deal with today, cybersecurity is a real threat to
Are the
our
Chinese giving us a nip? The Chinese military? I've heard the reports. There's a lot of cyber warfare underway now. Any comments?
Well, they certainly deny that it is them as a military or them as a country, but they're not the only country that is a threat with regard to that.
Yes,
There's some
yes.
extremely intelligent people that don't like the United States that have found pretty creative ways to hurt us or damage
Yes.
us without actually setting foot in the United States. So the cybersecurity threat is one that's very real. And then we've got to have the ability to gather the intelligence
Yes, yes.
through systems like our JSTAR systems
Yes.
at Robbins Air Force Base. And we've got to have the ability to put the men and the women on the
Yes.
ground in the areas where we have to go in and
Yes.
and secure areas.
Yes. Now, the funds have been sequestered.
Sure.
Maybe you could talk about that. What's the impact on our military readiness with
Sure.
sequestering funds, and how did all that happen, and what's going on?
Hey, let me say this. You know, we're taking in more tax revenue today than we ever have in the history of the country. But for every $7 that we take in, we're spending 10.
Yes.
So we've got about $1 trillion a year deficit still. And we know that we have to reduce federal spending. We know that with national defense being a fourth of the spending,
Yes.
that there are going to be some reductions in that area. But if you look at the president's budget, his proposal has essentially been to take all of the reductions from the military,
Yes,
and that's
yes,
absolutely
yes,
unacceptable
yes.
and leaves our country at risk.
Yes.
The better way to handle things with the reductions would have been to go to each of our base commanders and say, you know, for every dollar that you had to operate your base this year, you're going to have 99 cents
Yes,
next
yes.
year. And let the men and women that run those bases determine where the waste is,
Yes.
and let them squeeze it out. And there are a
Yes.
lot of things that are mandated on our basis from Washington
Yes.
that when you talk to the local commanders, they'll tell you, we're spending a lot of money on that
Yes.
that we really don't need to be spending it on. And so you hire good commanders, and you let them do their job, just as a major corporation in America. When they hire a plant manager, they don't
Yes.
micromanage that manager from
Yes.
their home office. They give them performance measures, and if that plant manager meets them, that's great, and they get to stay and get a bonus. And if they don't, they're gone. So
Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the national crisis in regards to the expanding debt.
sure.
The issues, the idea there might be some grand bargain in the offing. Do you have
Sure.
any comments about that? I mean, what?
Well, every proposal that we've seen from the president has been to increase taxes to increase spending.
Yes.
And so that's a non-starter. That's not going to happen as long as we as Republicans control the
Yes.
House. I think that if you look at total federal spending, I think most of us would tell you that we believe that there needs to be additional revenue,
Yes.
but that revenue needs to come from economic growth.
Yes.
And so if we put policies in place that are good for agriculture, if we put policies in place that are good for manufacturing,
Yes. Yes.
then that means Americans are going back to work. And
Yes.
if we drive that unemployment number down with
Yes.
good policies,
Yes.
then that means we have more tax revenue,
Yes.
and we have less expenditures because
Yes.
we've taken the person that's currently receiving a social benefit
Yes. Yes.
and is on the receiving end of tax
Yes.
dollars, and because they've got a job, now they're a taxpayer.
Yes.
So it's a 2-for-1 deal every time you put an American back to work.
Yes.
And so we're focusing on things that are good for manufacturing. We're focusing on things that are good for agriculture.
Yes.
Those are the two
Yes.
foundations of the
Yes.
economy. And when we get Americans back to work, get that unemployment number down,
Yes.
the sooner that happens, the sooner we get out of this pickle that we're in.
Now, you mentioned agriculture. Are you on that
Absolutely.
committee also?
I'm on the House Agriculture Committee as well, and we'll be writing a new farm bill this year. The farm bill, it's important, I think, for people to know that the United States Department of Agriculture's budget has grown from $96 billion a year to $155 billion a year in just the past 5 years.
Yes.
The majority of that comes from growth in food stamps.
Yes.
Production agriculture is now down to approximately 16% of the total spending of the Farm Bill, Joe.
Yes. Yes.
So when you're looking at the dollars, and it's production agriculture gets less
Yes.
than 20%
Yes.
of the total Farm Bill spending.
Yes.
So there's certainly some things in there that we can do to reduce the fraud and the abuses in the
Yes.
food stamp
Yes.
program. I, for one, want to give the states more flexibility in the administration of the program so that
Yes.
they could, for example, drug test people
Yes. Yes.
randomly. And if you
Yes.
fail the drug test, then you don't
Yes.
get to
Yes.
receive the benefits anymore.
Yes.
Don't want to mandate. I don't want to mandate that they do it from Washington.
Yes.
But I believe that if we give the states some flexibility in the administration of the programs, that they'll take care of that because the voters want that.
Yes. Now, one of the important things about agriculture, at least as I understand it, is that I guess agricultural workers come from other countries, and
Absolutely.
that's involved with the immigration
Absolutely.
bill that's out there. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Sure. There are a couple of things I'll tell you about immigration. I'm extremely concerned about any bill that has the word citizenship in it and creates an expedited path to
Yes,
citizenship
yes.
for somebody who's not in this country
Yes.
legally.
Yes.
Joe, if we want to fix the immigration system, the first thing we need to do is to fix the legal immigration process.
Yes.
It is extremely difficult for somebody to come from another country
yes.
and immigrate into this country.
Yes.
I've got a great friend who's from Mexico. She came on over on a student visa. She is married to a United States citizen. I have watched her as she has gone through the immigration process.
Yes.
Legally, it has cost her and her husband a tremendous amount of money.
Yes.
She is going through the naturalization process right now, and she's done it the right way.
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you that we've made it very, very difficult for people like her to come into the country and to
Yes.
do it the right way. And
Yes.
so I think that if we address the challenges, the cost, the roadblocks, and the barriers that are there for somebody who wants to come to this country
Yes.
and do it legally, then we'll help solve part of the immigration
Yes,
problem.
yes,
The other thing that we have to do is to deal with the work permit issue.
yes.
The H-2A program, which is essentially the program most of our farm workers come over on. There are clearly ways to handle that with the work permit. Other countries do this as well, and we can mirror what some other
Yes,
countries
yes,
do
yes.
with regard to the immigration program for those who want to come over, whether it be for agricultural work or
Yes,
work in our colleges.
Yes,
What we can't do is simply allow millions of people who are in this country illegally, who we don't know who they are, we don't know where they're from, we don't know what their intent is, to be a part of a system that's going to expedite them into becoming United States citizens. That's simply not acceptable.
Yeah, now, Austin, one of the things that happens, I think, in the way the world goes, is that sometimes there can be executive orders
Sure.
that basically are so powerful they frustrate the will of Congress.
Absolutely.
And you know, we've discussed a little bit about immigration, and I
Sure.
think the president just issued orders, did he not, that the power of the executive branch to effectuate change or restructure the country seems to be a pretty potent force these days. Any thoughts about that?
Joe, the Federal Register, which is the volumes and volumes of proposed rules and regulations that are out there that industry is having to comply with or fight the agency so that it
Yes.
doesn't become a rule, is astronomical. It's somewhere in the range of 27,000 pages, I think, just this year
Yes.
alone. We saw a rule today that was brought to our attention where the EPA is now going to use the Civil Rights Act
Yes.
to change rebuttable presumption in some of their cases that have to do with environmental protection. Now, that's been a mainstay of
Yes,
American law,
yes,
and
yes.
if somebody makes an accusation
Yes.
of you, then they have to prove that you
Yes.
did something
Yes, yes.
before they simply get an award. And so when you start to see agencies like the EPA reaching to
Yes.
a 1964 Civil Rights Act to change things that are as basic to fundamental
Yes.
law as that has been, that's typical of what we're seeing from this administration. And Joe, one of my primary criticisms of this president, and I'm a conservative, he's a liberal, there
Yes.
are a lot of things we're
Yes.
not going to agree on.
Yes.
But the one thing that he has done from a management standpoint is he has appointed activists to administrative positions.
Yes.
And so they're using the authority that they have as the administrator of agencies to carry out personal agendas instead of to carry out what their role is, which should be to carry out,
Yes.
as the Constitution says, the intent of the Congress, which would be the House and the Senate, and something that the President agreed to.
Well, that's a rather difficult situation, isn't it? I mean, if Congress doesn't pass laws, and they put pretty restrictive laws, it doesn't matter really what Congress does if the executive branch has the power to just by fiat create, I would say, law. I mean, if the Federal Register is saying you have to cut your grass 3 times a week based on some kind of logic, that turns out to be a pretty powerful thing.
And this is something that has been going on for a long time. Congress has continually ceded its authority to the executive branch. The executive branch now controls virtually everything that happens in the United States. If you look at what has gone on for the past 4 years, the Senate's refusal to
Yes.
adopt a budget. They finally adopted a
Yes.
budget this year after
Yes.
the no budget, no pay rule
Yes.
went into effect. The administration has essentially been left with more authority than our forefathers ever intended
Yes,
for the president
yes.
to have.
Well, is there any way that you can think of to restrict that? I mean, doesn't Congress have the power of the purse? Could you not fund some egregious bureaucrats that are overstepping their constitutional boundaries?
We do have the power of the purse, and if you look at what we as Republicans did this past year, We passed a budget. General public heard very little about it because it balanced over the course of 10 years.
Yes.
We believe that can be done. It means you're going to have to cut some agencies and
Yes.
cut some authority
Yes.
and get rid of some of these people that are causing some of
Yes,
the problems. But we do believe that we can do that. Unfortunately, we've operated somewhat under a scenario where it's been threat of a shutdown of the whole
Yes,
government
yes.
if we make any specific reductions in funding. So we don't want a shutdown, but
Yes.
we're not scared of a shutdown.
Yes.
And so, I'll tell you, I think we've got a responsibility to again, pass our appropriation measures through the House. I
Yes.
think the Senate has a responsibility to pass their appropriations measures. And then we've got to get to a conference committee and get to some agreement.
Yes.
And understand that we're not going to get out of a $1 trillion deficit in 12 months.
Yes.
But we can make continual progress with this, and we can be out of this deficit spending within the next 10 years.
Yes. So it's quite a daunting task, isn't it? Well,
It's possible.
Yes, it is possible. What would the country be like without you could say, divided government that we have right now, where the Republicans control the House? It would be a rather difficult situation, would it not, if there was one dominant party right now with the agenda that exists? It would be a difficult situation.
Well, I think the thing I would tell you, Sam, that people have to remember is Nancy Pelosi is more liberal than Barack Obama is.
Yes.
And so if they took over the House, she would be the Speaker of the House. She is actually pulling
Yes.
things, trying to pull him back to the left,
Yes,
believe it or not.
yes,
There's
yes.
not much room over
Yes,
there, but
yes.
she's trying to get him over there. So we're at least able to play defense and stop them from moving, that liberal agenda forward.
Yes, yes.
But we're ready to play offense. So hopefully we'll get the Senate back
Yes.
this coming year.
Yes.
Certainly when you see somebody like a Max Baucus saying they're
Right,
not going to run
right.
for
Yes,
re-election,
yes.
that's an indication that they know they're going to pay dearly for
Right,
some of
yes,
the things that
yes,
they voted
yes,
for
yes.
a couple of years ago, and some of their actions that
Yes,
they've taken
yes.
that have hurt this country
Yes.
so bad.
Well, Austin, it's been great talking to you. Keep playing tackle
Absolutely.
football up there.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks so much. We enjoyed it, and glad to be home for a
Yes,
couple of
good.
days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.